A language to be learned from scratch requires a lot of dedication, and the way the language is, and the way it's taught, it's got nothing to do with the actual course. You're just there learning the language, and a lot of people become disheartened when they come back, and I've seen that that's been the case. There are exceptions, of course. So a lot of people find that that degree is inaccessible to them. The other thing is that the content of this course, the way it is, the course as it exists in India and Pakistan and Bangladesh is so elaborate, the Dars al-Nizami, that it's actually recognized to master's level. So if you actually complete this, it's actually equivalent to master's level. But the problem is all the texts that exist, where all these sacred sciences are, all of these texts are in Arabic. And it's not even the Arabic. A typical Arab could pick up a book and just read from beginning to end like a newspaper and say, I've studied this knowledge. Remember, a lot of these books were written in a time when there wasn't really the availability of the printing press. Therefore, those who wrote it in such and Arabic is a very rich language, in such a manner that they would summarize an hour's lecture in a sentence. Now, in order to extract that knowledge from that one sentence, you would have to sit in the company of someone who would have had that. Of course, you didn't have the privilege of commentaries, which we have now, of course, because of the financial factors, the printing press and whatnot. But the reality was that these texts were in Arabic. Now, I know that in the modern day, a lot of those books now have commentaries on it. But let me give you an example. Imam Abu Hanifa, rahimahullah, a lot of you know him, we are Mukallid of Imam Sa. His book, known as Fiqh Akbar, is actually one page. Now, fancy writing a book which is one page. But that one page book, you can find commentaries on that book which go into 6-7 volumes, just on that one page. Likewise, another example, Ibn Hajar Asqalani, very great muhaddis. He wrote a book, Nukhbatul Fiqh, on usul of hadith, 1 or 2 pages. But commentaries on that go into 6, 7, 8, 9 volumes of commentary. That's just an example. So whilst we do live in an age of commentaries, and those commentaries, again, a lot of them are in Arabic, but still they're accessible. But who's got time to sit and read each commentary? It's a very laborious affair. Of course, one thing that the subcontinent ulama have done is that they've translated those books into Persian. The problem is, Persian is also out of date. And then those who have been part of this last generation of ulama, who translated it from Persian to Urdu. Again, the problem is, it's not language which is easily accessible to the Urdu-speaking audience, because it's a very specialist kind of arena. There are words in the English language which means something to the layman on the road, and it means something else to a professional of that particular field. And because this is knowledge, that those words, those terminologies can only be understood by being explained by someone who knows it in the first place, not simply by being able to decipher it from the text. So a lot of the material is in Arabic, and that's problematic. And Arabic is a prerequisite. The other thing is the format is very, for the modern day, not very user-friendly. Why? Because the way it works is that it's a book, it's opened up, you read it from beginning to end. Now, the author of that book may accommodate for the views of someone else, he may not. But the way the books were written, they weren't written to promote evaluative thinking. They were more written to promote informative and indoctrinating sort of mannerisms. So that you are a Hanafi student, this is a book, this is the Hanafi way, and that's the way you're taught. But of course, in this day and age where we live in a cosmopolitan environment where you have people who Muslims who have who follow different schools of Islamic law, one must be courteous, and one must understand why they act in the way they act in the performance of their prayers. For example, Rafa Yadain, Amin bil Jahl. These are legal issues. And you can't simply say, well, I'm right and you're wrong. The reality is, a person who says, Amin loud, does Rafa Yadain, the reality is, he's right and we are right. We're both right. But you must appreciate that only by being taught how they are right and how we are right. How can two people doing two different things both be right? That can only be delivered by evaluative, being given the opportunity of evaluative education. That is one of the very good features of the Western style of education, that it's not necessarily indoctrinating in the knowledge itself per se. But of course, that system of non-evaluative knowledge, the way and the books, the way it delivered it, was good for its time. But in the times that we're living, we require education to be delivered in a manner that allows the opportunity to evaluate. Why does this person pray like this? Why does this person believe like this? Why does he do this? All these why questions must be answered. You can't simply say, well, they are there and we are we, and that's it. I'm going to behave the way I've been taught because that's what my parents did and that's what I'm going to do. Well, if that's the criteria you use to adopt your values, then those who practice other religions, they are quite entitled to do what they do, because they were brought up in the homes that practice their religions. You can only be convicted on the path of deen if you understand the significance of it, and that can only be done in this day and age by the process of evaluation. Then we have what we call the lost generation. A lot of people sitting in this room are the lost generation. They are a generation that went to school, went to college, went to university, perhaps didn't go to college, perhaps just started working. So you have a huge generation that didn't have the opportunity to acquire these sacred sciences. They had the quest, they had the thirst, but they don't have the time. Why? They've got to go to school, they've got to go to college, they've got to go to university or work. They simply, their timetables don't allow them to achieve this depth of knowledge. What do they have? They have the internet, they have